You're listening to a Brain Stew Fresh Fright Review.
What's up, creeps, and welcome to a special Epic Film Guys spoiler-free Fresh Fright Review. I'm Justin.
I'm Jeremy. I had to add like a little at the end of mine. Like you randomly threw that in yours, and I was like, I'm Jeremy.
Dude, it's my
had to
James
match you.
Hetfield. Yeah.
Little one, don't forget my son. Brady, look what you've done.
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. Ooh,
Yeah.
This is a spoiler-free review, ladies and gentlemen, for Jeremy's most anticipated movie, I dare say, of the year. Am I right in saying so, my friend?
1000%, absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Alien Romulus, which we had the amazing opportunity. Thank you, 20th Century Studios, for letting us see that early at an early press screening. Oh, man. Lots to unpack, but what we're going to try to do with this one, creeps, is give you a little insight into our initial thoughts and not ruin any bit of the movie for you until BluBrry gets a chance to see it.
Spoiler-free, baby.
We're going to try our best. I mean, listen, if we went in depth at all on this thing, we would be ruining it for you. We still want you to listen. Thanks for listening. But we don't want it to ruin the experience for you if you decide to listen before you see the movie. And again, we're going to do another spoiler review with BluBrry. So we're going to jump right in here. For those that are uninitiated, that have no idea what Alien Romulus is, it's very clear you have not been listening to the show. But the movie is about space colonizers that come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe while scavenging the deep ends of a derelict space station. This is the Alien movie by Fede Alvarez, which is to be placed in between Ridley Scott's Alien and James Cameron's Aliens. Now, if you want to let our listeners in on just how excited you were, man, how big was your anticipation for Romulus?
It's tremendous. I could barely sleep the night before. Getting to the theater, I was on a 10, and it's funny because we've gone to movies before that you've been really invested in and hoping that they were good and that they were solid films. And before you've said to me, like, oh, I'm so nervous. And I've never really felt like that before. Like, I'm always just like, hey, I'm along for the ride. Hopefully it doesn't suck. And yesterday was like the first time where I needed this movie to be good because Aliens has meant so much to me since I was a little kid. I've talked about it on the show a few times. I collected all the Kenner action figures. I was obsessed with the movies. I read the Dark Horse comics. I would play outside with the neighborhood kids and we would literally play Aliens. We'd all fight over who got to play Hicks and shit like that, where we were fighting invisible xenomorphs with our toy guns, and like that's what we did. And I've carried all of that throughout my life of just loving this franchise and following this franchise and just always hoping. It's like Jurassic Park for me as well. It's like, dude, I just want another one that's close to being at least near the first Jurassic Park film. And like, it's, with Jurassic Park and Aliens, it's like, it's very hit or miss. Like nothing has come close to capturing what made those original films special. And I just, especially with this being in between Alien and Aliens, I really needed this to be good because I want that perfect trilogy. Like that was my thing. I just want that perfect trilogy. I want Alien, Romulus, Aliens. Like I want that to be my trilogy. So dude, I could barely sit still in the theater seat when we got there, and I was fidgeting and like literally like my palms were sweaty. Something mom spaghetti, dude. Like fucking I looked over at you and I was like, I'm nervous. And I've never felt like that before, but that's how much this movie meant to me, and that's how invested I was in this movie. Like, what about you? What was your, pre-film anticipation towards this?
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely. We talked about it earlier in the year with most anticipated. It was on my list. Nowhere near the level of you, but I grew up also watching the Alien movies. I'm a huge fan of the first two, and the rest can basically go fuck themselves.
Yep.
There's things about them that I really enjoy. I mean, what's interesting, Jeremy, is prior to us seeing Romulus, we put up some polls on our social media sites just to gauge people's reactions in terms of what their favorite sequels are aside from the first two. And I was actually beside myself. It really surprised at how many people love Resurrection and Alien 3. I mean, I've always known there's a big Alien 3 fan base for sure, but there were people out there like Covenant's my favorite. Prometheus is better than Aliens. I mean, I'm hearing takes that it took me a few minutes to actually realize that they were serious. But I've gone to see every Alien movie that I've been able to in the theaters, even the AVP movies, which don't count. But yes, Fede Alvarez is one of my favorite directors. Don't Breathe, modern classic. Evil Dead, 2013. We've talked about it on the show. Absolutely adore it. One of my favorite movies ever. So the concept of having someone like Alvarez get his mitts on the Alien franchise just sounds like a match made in fucking heaven. So my excitement level, just knowing what he's been able to bring to, especially Evil Dead, a franchise that kind of laid stagnant for a while, and he just injected, life into its veins again to bring it back and make it, this glorious return, just had me on the edge of my seat all year. Every trailer. I mean, I think we talked about it a little on the show. The second trailer for Romulus is probably like one of the best trailers of the past 5 years for any horror movie. It's brilliant. In the intro, where we're sitting here like beating around the shit before we decided to record, it came to me that, I think we talked about this last night. This movie was initially slated by Disney to be a Hulu straight to streaming release, which a lot of people are forgetting that it was going to be just come out.
That's right.
And Alvarez's initial story that he came up with was originally unconnected to the previous films altogether. So we'll talk about it a little bit without getting spoilerish, but it was very clear that when he got involved and they realized what he was doing and that it was actually like a really faithful take on the material in terms of what we've all come to know and love from the franchise, particularly the first two movies, that Disney was like, no, fuck that. Let's get Ridley involved. Let's make this a bigger deal. And I still believe this thing is going to be a massive deal. Jeremy, we had talked about this via text yesterday, not knowing what the budget was for this. And now it's been revealed that Romulus had an $80 million budget.
Wow. That's small compared to how big it really felt.
This movie, dude, I mean, we're going to get into it, but the movie feels fucking huge. And I'll just come right out real quick and say it. And I know you'll agree with me on this. Ladies and gentlemen, this movie took me right back to the 80s. The set design, the practical sets are absolutely breathtaking. The practical effects in terms of the creatures, people in suits and animatronics and literally everything that he did. I mean, there was actually fucking model work for spaceships in this movie that he had, that they scanned actual model work and then, transferred it to CGI to give it that look and feel. Alvarez did all of those things in bringing Romulus back to what you would expect from basically a movie from the 80s, and just approach the movie from that sensibility. There's obviously CGI in the movie. There's damn well plenty of it, but my eyes were on the amazing sets in these spaceships, which half the time now, anyone making a movie on a spaceship, you'll see a wall or two that looks practical, but the rest, it's all green screen. And here, for the most part, I feel like
they built the set. They did build the set. Yeah,
they did. This is a livable habitat that, just like the first two movies, like anytime you watch the special features for those movies, Jeremy, I'm sure you've done it yourself too many times. Like the tunnels and like all they do those shots above it where it's just like all you see is wood, but when you go inside the set, it's this amazing spaceship.
Yep.
or whatever the set is that they built. And that sensibility is brought into Romulus. So first and foremost, in regards to my anticipation, I believe I was correct in being excited that a director like Alvarez was the guy to take the reins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've listened to, I listened to the Alien Saga podcast, Perfect Organism, and like I've listened, they've had some of the effects guys and, set designers and stuff like that on their show. And yeah, I mean, dude, like you were saying, most of the time all this stuff is CGI nowadays because it's easier and it's faster and it's more cost effective now, which is crazy. Like back in the 80s and early 90s, like it was the exact opposite. Like, the computer stuff cost a bajillion dollars, and the practical stuff was the easier, more cost effective route to go. And it's flipped now because people are so good. I mean, look at our friend Jared. Look at what he can do with CGI, and he's just normal dude that doesn't work for a film studio. It's unbelievable what he can do. And there's millions of people out there that can do that now. So it's really cool and it's really special that for this movie, they literally built these practical sets. And like listening to the Perfect Organism podcast, they were like, yeah, like it was like a maze, like getting off of that set. Like you were literally on the spaceship, which I think it was beautiful. And what I really loved about it is the tech, right? That's one thing that Prometheus and Covenant did not nail, is that Ridley Scott did not match the tech from Alien from 1979. It wasn't those big keys and, analog looking screens and things like that. Everything looked glossed like you would see out of a Blade Runner 2049, right? To where this, Fede matched the tech and everything. I mean, there's so many callbacks to those first two Alien films right off the bat in the tech that they introduce and they show you. And man, it just made me smile ear from ear seeing those practical sets.
Yeah. I mean, we get to see it in IMAX, which again, the best way to see it on your first viewing, shot for IMAX, just a gorgeous film to look at. And I mentioned this on Twitter today in terms of the visual aspect, but the cinematography of the film, which is by Galo Alvarez, is just fucking amazing to look at. He did Gretel and Hansel for Oz Perkins. He did Roma and Alien Romulus here. Roma was one of the best looking movies I've ever seen, but he just apparently wasn't even the cinematographer on that film. But this guy has like one of the most beautiful eyes for a movie like this I've ever seen. The movie is just a stunner to watch. It's one of those, much like you mentioned Blade Runner 2049. It's crazy you say that because I liken this to that in the sense where I could just have it on and look at it and not even have sound on, and I would just still gaze at the beauty in the image,
like a painting.
Taken aback by it. But the look of the movie is there. I feel like tone is there. Characters are, a totally different story here. So what we have here, without, again, without spoiling a lot, is this is a different take on what we've come to expect from these movies. This movie basically follows a group that, they work for the Wayland Corporation, and they're like, I want to get the fuck out of here. They're stuck on this in this work situation where they can't get out of it. They're stuck there for a few more years, Jeremy, and they're basically like, we found a way to get out of here and we're going to take it. And this ragtag group of people just decide to group together and make this trip, which is basically like almost near suicide in terms of like the percentage, the chance of them making or breaking this thing. But they're working in mines. Some of these people, these characters, have lost their family members in these mines, and they're like, you know what? I want to take this chance. Let's do this. And I like that this movie approached it from another everyman standpoint, where these are just regular people in this timeline, just trying to live their lives and just, be normal. And then they get thrown into this really insane, terrifying position. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
I just finished reading Alien Isolation, the novel, based on the video game, and I've read a lot on Fede's take on this movie and what inspired him to make this movie, and literally he initially got the idea for this movie after playing Isolation. He played the game, he's a gamer, and he was like, "Man, that was so fucking good, and it was terrifying." Like, I'm not a gamer myself, but from what everybody has told me is the game is legitimately scary, that people it fucked them up, man, that they would have trouble sleeping, they would jump while playing it, that it was just very, very terrifying, and he was like, "Man, this is nuts. If I were to ever do something in that sandbox, like I would want to do something in this vein." And then he said that he kind of like haphazardly started working out a story in his brain. Well, like, all right, like if I was to do one of these, like what would I do? And I think that motivated him eventually to kind of come up with something that he was like, man, I feel like this would be a home run for this franchise, which this franchise desperately needs. And that is what I think he took to the studio, and pitched to them. And I can tell you, bro, this is very, very close to Isolation. A lot of things are very, very, very close to Isolation. And I'm sure that there's Easter eggs from Isolation hidden on that space station, which that's another thing that I can't wait to start, like, for these internet sleuths to be like this, because like, I don't know. I'm not the one that's gonna watch it 500 times and like try to fixate on a canister that's
Well, listen, you found a few things, which again,
many,
we don't,
dude,
we don't,
many.
yeah, we don't want to ruin those
No,
little
no, no, no. There
Easter
is a
eggs,
lot
but
of there's a lot of Easter eggs. There's a lot of callbacks. There's a lot of uh character movements and lines of dialogue that are very, very related to things that we've seen and that are absolutely callbacks. But this you can tell that Fede, like, think about it though. Now I'm about to go. I just hit the green light, man. Let's go. So
go.
the last Alien movie that was written and directed by the same person was Aliens from 1986, because Ridley Scott, he didn't write Alien. B, he didn't write Prometheus or Covenant either. Same thing with Alien 3, it was written by one person, directed by another person, right? So it was somebody else wrote the script and then they got a hired gun in. Oh, this guy's a great visionary director. Like we'll bring him in to do the job. This is the first time since 1986 that the person directing it also wrote it, which means automatically it's instantly their stamp. And Fede Alvarez, one of the quotes that he said while promoting this movie that I love is he's like, I want you to either love this movie or I want you to fucking hate it. He goes,
Wow,
either
that's pretty bold, man.
yeah, he said, I want you to love it or I want you to fucking hate it. I want you to feel something. He said, the last thing that I want is for you to watch this and go, yeah, it was okay, and then move on with your life.
And
He
you
goes,
know what he
"That's-
means by that. He's very
Yeah.
aware, being a fan of the reactions that most of us have had. Well, not most, I'm speaking for myself.
Some of
but
us, yeah.
a lot of us have had with the past few movies of this franchise. Again, that's not to say there's not stuff to love from them. It's not to say that if you do love them that you're wrong, because as we always say, movies are subjective. But
Always.
seriously, I love that quote, because
Absolutely.
here's the thing. He's just wanting someone to feel something from the art.
Mhm. For sure.
And that's a true artist's vision.
And that's
just,
Yep.
yeah.
And that's what he said. He goes, I want to live and die by the sword on this thing. Like it's undeniably him beginning till end. And he goes, and if it fails, it's my fault. It's nobody else's, it's mine. But he's standing behind it, which I love. So, I mean, he's coming to this thing from a place of love, not a place of I need a paycheck and I'm going to take this gig. You know what I mean? And I think that's a great place to be. This movie is scary. And that is something
Absolutely.
that is something we have not gotten since 1992's Alien 3, because say what you will about Alien 3, that movie is scary. It is creepy.
Oh man, the atmosphere in that movie, I'll give it that much. It's got amazing atmosphere. The sets, the setting. There's some scary shit in that movie. I saw it as a kid. Damn right, it's scary for sure.
It's uncomfortable. This movie, Romulus, is a horror film, like without a doubt. Which is who better than Fede Alvarez for that, right? Like, I mean, the dude is a fantastic horror filmmaker, and he made, the first Alien movie is a horror film. It's famously referred to as a haunted house movie because it kind of plays like one. And that's what this is, right? This is through and through a horror film. And that element really, really works. The face huggers. We get scenarios that we've never encountered with those creatures ever.
Shivers down my spine. I mean, the
Terrifying.
stuff they do with the face huggers, they just up the ante tenfold and go places we've never seen them go before. Super exciting stuff. I mean, you've just seen the trailers, and even the stuff in the trailers, those scenes, Jeremy, when they played out on screen, you sat next to me. I jumped back in my seat. I jumped forward in my seat a number of times, just experiencing this. And most of these scenes are done with practical effects, most of them. And then married with CGI stuff that obviously they can't do practically, but that stuff, oh God. And to comment and, kind of piggyback off what you were saying, I think this movie is the best of both worlds in terms of having it's one part Alien and one part Aliens, because there's also some great action sequences in this movie that have a lot of tension and a lot of buildup that are really fucking exciting and really creative. Near the ending there's an anti-gravity scene where I was just having a fucking blast with it.
It's genius. It's never been done in an Alien film, or maybe fucking ever. The anti-gravity scene. It was absolutely brilliant. When we do the spoiler review that we'll do next, I'm going to list, because there is definitely a through line that connects these films, and if I overly explained that right now, it would be spoiler-esque. But what I can say is the movie starts and it's aliens, and then it turns into Alien, and then it goes in other directions. But for me, that was interesting because I thought it was going to be Alien and then turn into Aliens, and it was a flip on that, which I found to be really interesting. The characters, one of the deal breakers for people has been, well, it's a young cast. Like, wow, they threw teenagers in this thing. Why not? Like, I mean, we've gotten all of these movies with people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Like, obviously, there's kids out there.
That's true. I mean, and this also lends itself to being open for a younger audience. We were talking about this pre-show a little bit. I think like my kid who's 20 and her boyfriend who's 21. This is a movie where if they've never even seen, maybe they've seen Aliens, right? Or just seen the original and none of the sequels, they'd go, hey man, a new Alien movie comes out. Like it's got a youthful energy to it in a sense. Let's go fucking see that. It looks pretty rad. It looks gnarly. I think this is a great way to open up a new gateway for new fans and also, old fans at the same time. Kaylee Spaney, who is our main character who plays Rain Carradine, let's just talk about her right now, man. She is absolutely amazing in this movie. She carries this movie, and a lot of people are going to be like, well, she's going to be compared to Ripley, blah, blah, blah. Sure, for obvious reasons, but, she's 26 years old. She's got this youthful energy, but she's not Ripley, dude. Her character is not Ripley. She's got
not different
problems. She's a different person. She's a different character altogether. I loved this character. I thought she was fantastic. I thought her performance was right on par with what you would hope for with a leading character in an Alien movie. And then, of course, we have David Johnson, who plays Andy, which is Rain's brother, a synthetic Andy, which is an android.
Dude, hold on. So, real quick, I had to jump in right there. So, what's wild about Andy's character is that I'm trying to think of what I could say. He's basically almost like an autistic android. Like,
Absolutely, dude.
and
No, I agree.
and he delivers a beautiful performance that literally had my eyes welling up with tears. And I'm gonna say something that I told you pre-show I was gonna tell you this, but
Here we go.
here you go. My favorite non-Ripley character in all of the Aliens movies is Parker. I fucking love Parker. Like, let's talk about the bonus situation, right? I love Parker, right? I never expected another character to kind of take over for, like, I think this might be my favorite character of any
Holy shit.
Alien movie.
Holy
Dude,
shit.
Andy was such a enriched character, full of development, full of emotion, full of like childlike qualities that, god damn, dude, I fell in love with Andy. Like, I love this character. I connected more with this character than any of the other characters, to where I was like, fuck. I'm like, when you watch, some of these films and you've got the synthetics, it's like, if they go, they go. Okay. Not Andy, for fuck's sake, man. It's like when The Walking Dead was huge and everybody was like, protect Daryl Dixon. For me, man, I'm like, dude, nothing better fucking happened to Andy, because that's my dude now. That's my dude.
And how crazy is that, Jeremy, that the character is synthetic? And we're in a world right now, 2024, where AI is almost like this big hot topic. We've talked about it on the show a bunch of times this year already, with AI artwork and AI this, AI that, AI use in film. And the way that Alvarez gives such character and depth, and you feel so much for a synthetic character. There's a lot to say about the humanity relating to this character and how you feel for him. And I think that he hits the nail on the head in terms of really trying to connect you with the character. And at some point in the film, I realized, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm connecting the most almost to an artificial character. And there's so much of the dialogue
too. He is
adorable. He is. And he plays it like a little kid almost. And then, without giving spoilers, like he definitely, his character does transition throughout the movie. We see a lot of depth. We see a lot of changes. The performance itself, again, from David Johnson, brilliant. The rest of the cast, I would say, is all pretty solid. I don't think anyone else, personally, I didn't feel like anyone else was a huge standout, but I think everyone was really good. How did you feel about the rest of the cast? Anything stand out for you? Or,
I mean, of course, I'll give Kaylee Spaney her accolades too, man.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
As we
yeah,
opened
yeah. I mean, you gave her the props. I just wanted to make sure I give her the props as well. Like, she was fantastic. I knew after watching Civil War this year that we were in for a treat with her in the lead role in Alien Romulus, because to me, she stole the show in Civil War. And I mean, dude, she's, a beautiful actress, and she's shown that she has the acting chops and dramatic capabilities and character work. So I knew, here we go, like, she's going to be fantastic in this role of Rain Carradine.
She's been on a roll,
by the way, I fucking love the name Rain Carradine. Like, what a fucking cool name, dude. Like,
that's one thing. I mean, if you think about this franchise, man, I think a lot of people just have really cool fucking names. Like, think about Jeremy. Think about the fans right now that are going to see this movie in the next week or two, and then in 9 months they got a kid popping out, and they're like, "Honey, yeah, Rain." It's a super
Rain
hippie. It's a super hippie-ish name, David Carradine. I'm just thinking that. With Rain, which is like a super 70s vibe right there, which I loved. Obviously, Alvarez, like, hey, let's harken back to that feeling, because like when Dan O'Bannon wrote Alien, like those sensibilities were there for sure. He had a lot of that. I was gonna say when Dan O'Bannon wrote it, like if you listen to him when he was alive talk about him writing the initial drafts and the story for this, there's an element of like some hippie-ish shit going on in his head, I think, a little bit.
For sure. Yeah, if this movie would have come out in 2020, my second kid would have been Rain Carradine Moorhead, for sure. 100%. I love the name. So Kaylee Spaney was just a home run of a performance, and then like we said, David Johnson as Andy. Man, dude, Archie Renault playing Tyler.
He was good. He was really
He
good
was
too,
super
man.
solid.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I really I don't think there is a weak link. There's not one of the actors where I was like, they could have been better. I
Well, I
think
mean,
everybody did great with, especially, man, dude. Yeah, you want to talk about evoking a fucking a reaction out of me is Spike Fern playing Bjorn, and
absolutely.
the way that he was bullying Andy. I fucking hated that
I know.
guy.
Dude, I
They
was gonna say
explained,
I haven't hated a guy in a movie that much in a long
yeah,
time, dude.
yeah. They explained why he was bullying the synthetic, uh, or as I prefer to be called, artificial person. But
Mm-hmm.
so that softened it. That softened it a little bit. Um, but I fucking hated him, and I'm like, you know what? He did his job. He did his job. He made me fucking hate him, which is
And
the
I
whole
can't
reason
wait
that
to
Eddie wrote
hopefully,
her like
yeah,
that.
and I can't wait to hopefully see him reach a very early and brutal demise.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, the cast was great. And here's my thing. You know, I had a conversation with somebody several months ago, and they're like, I don't like the fact that it's kids. And I'm like, dude, it's never been done, which is exactly why they should do it. We've already gotten the storylines with the 30s, 40s, 50-year-old people. I want to see teens and young adults in peril in this universe, because why not? That's great. The motivation for why they wanted to get off this planet and they wanted to travel, to another planet, to have a better life. I all of these things make sense. And my response to that person was, as long as it services the story. And so, this person said, hey, I feel like they're just going after the Scream market. And I'm like, well, hey, I'm sure it doesn't hurt that it probably will catch that market's attention. But I think in this case, and this is before I saw the movie, I said, I think in this case, it just really serviced the story. And Fede said the reason he wanted to do that is because there's a deleted scene in Aliens where you're on Hadley's Hope, the terraforming colony, and there's kids like playing and like riding bicycles, Wayland Yutani bicycles. It's a great scene. And he goes, it made me go, what's their story? Like, how much do they fucking
Right.
hate being on this planet that's not even fully terraformed yet? Like, life has got to be so fucking horrible on this planet that's not even like really livable yet. And he said that gave him the idea of like, if I ever get to do one of these things, like I want to do something with them. So that's what these group of characters are, is they're growing up on a terraforming colony on a planet that they're trying to transform the atmosphere to be livable and habitable, and they want to get the fuck off this rock, and they want to find a place where they can live a better life on an actual livable nice planet. So that puts the wheels in motion for where the story goes, and it all makes sense, it all works, and it absolutely services the story for why we have these young adults that are put in this horrific situation, and it works gangbusters.
It does, and I loved the characters, or hated in the instance you just mentioned with
Sure,
Bjorn.
sure, yeah.
Everyone served their purpose perfectly, and I liked that the movie is so streamlined and small in terms of character, that we're not introduced to random characters throughout. It feels very much like Alien in that sense, where you were the group of people the entire movie, and those are the only people you really interact with, and I liked that
Yeah.
a lot. um without getting into spoiler territory, but I do have to mention, before we get to some of the things that probably didn't work for you that you can talk about without actually saying what they were, I truly do believe that this is the most visceral, the most terrifying, movie of this series that I've experienced since Aliens. And I just have to keep hammering that home for people, that for me, this was absolutely the movie I hoped it would be, in terms of just capturing the feeling of those first two movies. Earlier this year, obviously, we had the anniversary of Alien, and it went back into theaters. Jeremy, didn't you see it like a couple times in theaters? I know I saw it
several times.
I saw it once in
times
theaters
in
at
theaters,
work in
yeah.
Alamo, and this year James Cameron did his, I dare say, revisionist transfer of Aliens, in which at D23 recently when he was there showcasing Avatar stuff. He was like, "You don't like my new transfers? Find a life." That's his reaction, basically. So, you want grain structure? Go find a life. I'm like, okay, all right, dude. Well, we're the ones buying your shit. But, anyways,
That's hilarious.
We're at this point where I feel like we've so many fans, including yourself and myself, we've just been hoping for something. Just give me something scary. Give me, like you said, another haunted house in space movie, or in the case that I felt with Romulus, another slasher in space where there's something stalking them and they're in these claustrophobic environments and they just are trying to keep their life. So all of that stuff for me worked. All of the action worked for me. I think the cinematography, the look, the vibe. I have to mention that Benjamin Wallfish's his score for the movie. Benjamin, we wanted you on for The Flash last year. We talked about it. Warner said no. Hopefully we can get you on to talk about this one and also talk about that one. I thought his score was a great mixture of Jerry Goldsmith stuff and also new school mainstream stuff as well that kept the pulse moving and that heartbeat, that pounding sound throughout the movie. Now, I know for you, this is a hard subject to bring up without actually giving specifics, but there was some stuff, there is some stuff, I should say, rather, in Romulus that didn't work for you.
Yeah, which, man, the first two acts of this movie, I was so happy because I'm like, they did it. Here we are. We got it. Like, I just wanted a film that would really round out a perfect trilogy, right? Because Alien, perfect. Aliens, perfect. I'm cool with that being one concise story. Like I said to you pre-show, like I consider Terminator, like it's Terminator and then T2. That is one story that was told over the span of two films, and they prevent Judgment Day. That's the entire story. Everything we've gotten after it, it's fun fodder. It's great, like what if scenarios. Cool. But when I think of Terminator, it is one story split up over two films and then it's done. And for me, that's kind of been the case with Aliens, right? Like I really enjoy Alien 3 a lot, especially that director's cut. I have a lot of love for that movie, but there's a lot of things in that movie I also don't really accept and I don't want to accept. So it's always been for me, it's the same, it's the Terminator situation. It's one story told over two films and then it's done. So here comes Romulus and they're like, this takes place in between the two. And I'm like, dude, if they nail this and it fits flawlessly between the two, we will have a perfect trilogy. And that would be really fucking cool for me being a lifelong Aliens fan. First two acts, that's exactly what we got. The third act goes in a direction that I was not necessarily anticipating, and it's either going to really work for people or it's really not going to work for people, and that's cool. And I'm trying to look at it subjectively as well, right? Because Fede Alvarez, as an artist, why would he want to do something that's already been done before and anchor his film, his stamp, in retreading something that's already been done before? I understand why he would want to branch out and try to bring something new and potentially exciting to the table. And I think that's why we got the third act that we did. I'm still honestly really digesting it because I wasn't expecting it. So it's not that it didn't work for me. It's just that it's not what I had anticipated. If this was
expectation versus reality, right? We talk about that a lot.
Absolutely. If this is going to fit in between Alien and Aliens seamlessly, I felt like the third act played against that aspect for me. And I was not accepting of it due to that, because I feel like what we're given in that third act does not mesh with what Alien and then Aliens was. So that's where I was like, oh, fuck, you had me. And then I'm not saying it was squandered. I'm not even saying it was bad. I'm saying that 24 hours later, Justin, I am still in my head on this movie, and I'm really still breaking it down. I'm still digesting it. I'm still analyzing every aspect of it. I mean, like, dude, you told me earlier, you're like, bro, you are spiraling because I'm like, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this?
Some of the shit you were saying in terms of questioning things, in terms of connections and stuff to other movies, and I mean, it's a good thing though. That means you're thinking that deeply about the movie, and I mean, again, man, I love that passion. I have the same passion for so many movies, and especially the lore and the mythos and everything to do with the Alien movies is so vast. It's huge. So you're not going to be the only one saying this shit. And also, you know, I stayed up late last night to post our my little blurb rather on Twitter because it's part of our job doing this thing. And I saw one other major critic. I'm not going to mention his name. Really cool fucking dude. He said almost exactly what you said to me in the car as we were leaving the theater, which I was like, he's not alone. We are not alone. Jeremy is not alone in the Alien verse. But, you know, I totally respected it. And honestly, at the same time, while I felt bad for you feeling that way about the third act, we're still seeing it a second time tomorrow.
I'm excited.
You know, we're hosting an advanced screening at Tyson's Corner in IMAX to a huge crowd of fans, you know, which is a big deal, especially for you, considering how much this franchise means to you. So it's going to be cool. We're going to be giving away swag, and then also gives you the opportunity to see it a second time. This wouldn't be the first time on Epic Film, guys, where you or I sees a movie. We do an initial spoiler-free review, go back and see it a second time, and maybe have a different realization of certain aspects, or maybe we'll see it again and it'll be the same exact feeling. You never know. For me, at least, I can say very safe and soundly to our audience that everything in the movie, for the most part, I'd say 99.9% of it worked for me. And I could feel your energy throughout the film. I feel like, you know, we're kind of reactive in that way when we watch movies. I could feel your energy. You can feel mine. We talk about it a lot, especially at early screenings where we're really anticipating something. So I kind of knew when the energy for you went downward and then mine was still going up. I'm like, oh, this is a weird feeling. But we don't want to get into details, ladies and gentlemen. We don't want to ruin anything in terms of what this could mean for you, make or break, rather. But Jeremy, I really appreciate you being so honest about it, though. And as soon as he walked out, I kind of felt like, oh man, I just didn't want this to be the one where it didn't land for you, you know? Because
it hurt me a little bit, man. Not because I wanted nothing more than to walk out and be like, they did it, they
fucking
home
did
run,
it.
home run. Like I wanted nothing more than to write a post on my socials and say, go and see this movie, which absolutely you should, but go and see this movie, lights out, home run. Like I wanted that more than anything, but I wouldn't have been honest if I would have done that with how I felt walking out of the movie yesterday. And I'm not saying that it 100% did not work for me or that I dislike it. I'm saying that for the first time, maybe since I've been on this show, I don't know. I really don't. And I actually really do need a second viewing. Like most of the time, I'm pretty cut and dry when I see a movie on how I feel about it. This is the first time that I can really think of where I'm like, I need to see it again and I need to really digest. I think I've actually warmed up a little bit more to it throughout the day as I start breaking parts down. But I really need that second screening tomorrow. Like if you asked me right now, trash it or treasure it, it would be the first time in the history of the show that I'd say, I can't.
Yeah.
I don't
It
know.
makes sense, man. It makes sense because here's the thing, dude. Whether we review movies, critics, whatever you want to say or not, this is something that's so near and dear to your heart as a fan, first and foremost. It's not just, you know, whatever random movie popping up. So you have this deep emotional attachment to it. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we decided we were going to do a spoiler-free thing. We wanted to get something out for you in terms of our initial thoughts on it so you could enjoy it, but also letting you know that, you know, a super in-depth, full spoiler review is coming. It's coming, man. It's gonna be a fucking chest burster right through your fucking abdomen and your chest, your titties, your man titties, whatever you got, brother. You got some nice big fat pecs. Yeah, squeeze them shits because it's gonna be coming right fucking through there. But before we there's no treasured on this one. We're just gonna talk about how we kind of felt about it, knowing final rating or anything like that, because I agree a second watch would be great, but we can both agree, Jeremy, maybe I can speak for you, maybe I can't, but this is the first movie for me, at least. Covenant tried it, right? Alien 3 has its moments. Resurrection is whatever you want to call it. I think it's pretty to look at. But this is the first movie for me, at least, where Alvarez was able to make the xenomorph, the creature that is so iconic as the shark in Jaws, as iconic as fill in the fucking blank. It's as iconic as Indiana Jones. It's as iconic as Darth fucking Vader, where he was able to make this perfect organism scary again. And that was a feat that I didn't think was even possible, and he achieved it. I'm not going to say that, you know, he made it like this fresh, new, inventive thing entirely, but he did take something that we all know in our minds and in our hearts, this image. I mean, dude, growing up in the 90s, dude, it was just like you said, you had the figures, the comics, you looked everywhere. You just knew that penis head looking fucking thing was around the corner. You're like, oh man, I'm scared of that thing, you know? Yeah. And I have to give him props for that and the amazing work done in terms of embodying the xenomorph. Trevor Newland was the guy in the suit for the majority of the movie and did a fantastic job in continuing that legacy. Love the design as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, unless you have any final thoughts before we end out.
No, man, this is still a really, like, despite, you know, some of my criticisms on it and how certain things made me feel, this is still absolutely a really, really, really good Alien film. Absolutely the closest thing that we've gotten to the first two films is this film. So if you love those films, which I know you do, you're really in for a treat with this one, and it's really fucking good, man. I can say that despite my criticisms, it's really, really good, and it's some of the best character development we've gotten out of any of these films ever. Like, agreed. I mean, these some of these characters you truly care about, and they're rich with character development, right? These are not cardboard cutout characters thrown on a spaceship running from xenomorphs. These are really fleshed out human characters, which is fantastic. And that was a breath of fresh air. Go and see this movie immediately. And if you love the third act, reach out to me, man. Tell me why you loved the third act, because, you know, maybe I'm too close to it. Maybe I read it wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I want to love this thing. Like, I don't ever go into a movie going, man, I can't wait to shit on this one. Like, no, like, I love this thing. Like, I'm looking at a wall right next to me right now that's nothing but aliens.
Where's your full-size Xeno? Your full-size Xeno's not even near you, is it?
Not even near me, no. But I've got I've got tons of shit down here. I'm looking at an entire wall that's dedicated to Alien and aliens because I love this shit, and I still really, really, really enjoyed this, and I'm really excited to see the movie again tomorrow. And I hope, because sometimes, like you said, perceptions change, our feelings change on things. We see things that we didn't see before that click on repeat viewings. And that's exactly what I'm hoping happens for me tomorrow. I hope that it's one of those things where I go, fuck, all right, I misread that, which is completely possible. How many times have you heard a song that you're like, I don't fucking like that song? And then all of a sudden you're like,
you let it pass you by, and then second or third listen, you're like, I fucking like this. Then like, by the week after, you're like, I fucking love this song.
Yeah, absolutely. And it happens. So, you know, I don't ever, hold someone to, like, if they tell me they fucking love a movie and then then all of a sudden they're not so hot on it, or vice versa if it goes the opposite into that. I don't ever really hold people to that stuff because opinions change, right? Feelings on things change. So while I'm coming in kind of lukewarm on this, it doesn't mean that tomorrow I won't be blazing hot on it, and that's what I hope happens. And if it doesn't, then it just is what it is. That's what film is. And what do we say, Justin? Film is
subjective.
Absolutely
baby.
right.
And to cap that off, sometimes when our anticipation is gone and we're just there for the ride, we're not scared anymore. We're not worried. We're not sitting there. You allow yourself to relax. And like I said about long legs, you just let it fuck you. Spread your ass, let it fuck you. Let it just take you over. Yeah, it's a different thing. And we'll see. We're going to talk about it more in depth on next week's full spoiler Fresh Fright review of Alien Romulus. But until then, this was our spoiler-free discussion for you guys. Thanks so much for listening. If it's your first time, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we gave you nothing. It's basically blue balls. Sorry you got the condom out and everything.
Dry humping with your jeans on, baby.
Nothing's going to happen tonight, baby. Sorry, you tried. You look good and everything, but just not tonight. But if you're a long-term listener, thanks again for listening and keeping up our download numbers and keeping the name out there and just representing EFG. We're all over social media at Epic Film Guys on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, literally everywhere you can find podcasts and all that jazz. But just happy to be here with Jeremy to experience this with him. When he was there for me last year with The Flash, say whatever the fuck you want about it. I don't give a shit. Talk trash.
I love that movie. But
he knew how important the return of Michael Keaton's Batman was to me, and he was there, and we got to experience it together and do this big event. And this year, for his most anticipated movie of the year, we're there doing the same thing for Alien Romulus. So it's a big deal for Epic Film Guys. So we're just so excited to be there doing this thing, having a blast doing it, and you guys sticking with us and listening and following along with the ride. So once again, I am Justin.
I'm Jeremy.
And as always, we'd like to ask you to keep it